Greetings and bienvenue, midnight crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast, and welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
I have one from a mission trip that several people from my church went on. It wasn't anywhere really crazy. We just went down to Mexico. 10 years old. I was raised very Christian. On a mission trip in Mexico, and we're staying with a local family as we pass through this one city or village. Sorry, I don't remember a lot of the details. Everyone's hanging out outside talking about Jesus. I'm young, so I go off and play with some of the Mexican kids. I was raised bilingual, so I could speak with them. When it started getting dark, they told me to go inside. They made it seem like we could get in big trouble if we didn't. So I did what they said and noticed all the adults were going inside too. I just remember everyone being really quiet, like they were afraid to talk. Inside, people sat around hardly talking at all until some people from my church started praying. Then I started hearing this sound outside like a stampede. Lots of stomping and snorting like horses do when they're mad. The prayers got a lot louder, and then the stampede sound got louder too, and it seemed to be coming from all around the house. I remember the kids telling me not to look outside. I didn't even ask why, but one of them told me that if I looked out the window that whatever was out there would steal me away. But eventually the noise outside died down, and that's all I really remember. I don't know why, but after that I just thought it had all been a dream. Maybe my parents told me that to keep me from being scared. I don't know. Anyway, not long ago I brought this dream up to my mom, and she told me that it had actually happened. She said when we first showed up at that house, the people had warned our church about a demon, saying that we had to go inside before dark. They said it happened on certain days, and we just happened to show up on one of those days. My church, of course, believed in demons, but they believed Jesus would protect them from the demon, so they weren't afraid. The family we were staying with warned them to go inside before it got dark, but the people in my church said they would stay outside to prove that Jesus wouldn't let them be harmed. But then just before it got dark, everyone just felt compelled to go inside, even my parents and our church. Nobody even said anything. People just started walking inside. Then they went inside and started praying like I said. She said some of the other people in our church told her weird things, like they heard people shouting their names and the noise outside. Weird thing is, I never even felt scared, even when the stampede was surrounding the house. I guess it was because I was just too clueless to be afraid.
I was dispatched to a structure fire, a disturbance call, and a request for an ambulance at the same address. Multiple calls on this incident. I arrived on the scene and found a crowd of people holding down a violent naked man, screaming at the top of his lungs. An elderly woman struck multiple times in the head with a hammer in a fully engulfed house, with fire rolling out the windows. I'm thinking, WTF. I was able to quickly determine the naked man was the elderly lady's son. He had attacked her with a hammer and set the house on fire as well. She was a lay pastor in one of the rural churches, and he'd become a Satanist while in prison. Handcuffed the wild naked guy and had the neighbors hold him down until additional units arrived. I began administering life-saving care to the woman. She had multiple depressed skull fractures and one eye laying on her cheek. The structure was a loss. The woman was sent to intensive care. The naked guy was scary. He was talking in two voices at the same time. I had him in the back of the police car, and I knew he was solo. I'm hearing two voices speaking at the same time. He would cry out for God to save him, and another deep, evil-sounding voice would tell him to shut up, you weakling, I own your soul. The naked guy would scream out in remorse, and the evil voice kept telling him the deal was done. This arguing continued back and forth, and as the man would call out to be saved, the voice would laugh. I truly believe that I had evil itself in handcuffs. The suspect later hung himself while in prison. I'm sitting here writing this, and the hair on my neck and arms is standing straight up. You can believe it or not. I know it happened, and I seldom share this story because it's so hard to believe. But I swear it's true.
First time posting a green text, but it's true. Pics included and even coordinates. Be me. Be 14. The October to November of 2018. Be in high school. Me and my stupid ass friends had broken into an abandoned house a few days ago. The pic is the house in question. My buddy Jaden comes up to me at lunch. Let's go to the trap house after school. We had decided to call it a trap house despite not being one. Okay, didn't think much of it and thought it would be fun. The end of the day comes. Meet up with Jaden outside of our high school. Walk to the house. It's not even that far from our school, a block or so away in a weird little neighborhood. The first time we went into this house, it was filled with Catholic shit, crosses, paintings of Jesus and other religious stuff. The house itself had a fucking awful vibe to it. Feel just like straight hatred and the feeling I do not belong there, and to leave the entire time I was inside the house every time I went. My friends think I'm weak and dumbass for feeling weird in an empty, abandoned house. Okay guys. PNG. Feel like I'm being watched cliche, but it feels like when someone is right behind you and even if you don't know it, you're aware of it. This place isn't right. Today would prove me right. Me and Buddy walking to the house down a road called Watch Avenue. We get around the corner and enter the empty field next to the house. Get this feeling not to enter while standing in the empty lot near the house. My body just won't let me get any further. My legs feel like posts cemented into the ground below me. My friend, Jaden, asks me what's wrong. Say I don't know. I don't feel right about this. I'm not going in there, but you can. Calls me a coward in the name of a female dog for not wanting to enter it. I literally do not give a shit about what he says. I'm not entering this house. Buddy goes to investigate. Buddy goes around the side to the back door, which had been unlocked as we broke a window to get inside and unlock it for easier access. He's gone for not even 20 seconds. Comes bolting back towards me, pale and a bugged out look on his face. WTF dude. JPG. He runs up to me, hands on his knees, panting hard as fuck. He has asthma and trying to catch his breath. After a moment or so he regains his breath and his retarded asthma fucks off. He begins to tell me what he saw. Said he thought he saw a person in there. Begins to tell me the person was dressed in all black, had pearly white eyes, and was child-sized. Pick sorta related. The back door of the house enters into the kitchen and bathroom. Someone could have been hiding in there, I rationalized. I think he's bullshitting for sure. Finally gain composure and I'm ready to fight the demons or whatever the fuck is in this house. Let's fucking go. MP4. Have my buddy come with me up to the back porch of this house. Tell him to wait here, and if he hears a struggle or me yelling to come in and help. Our plan in case I got attacked by a hobo or something. He's waiting at the back door. Enter through the long, dark hallway of the back porch edition of this house, my eyes straining in the dark to see anything as there were large pieces of plywood over the windows at this time to prevent a burglars from getting or some squatters. That weird feeling comes back. It becomes too fucking powerful as I enter the kitchen. Go into the bathroom to check. The feeling is overwhelming me, like I literally could not breathe in that house. Get the smell of a skunk or some kind of gas leak sulfuric smell. I wish I was bullshitting you guys, but that's what I smelt. Look around in several of the downstairs rooms. My instincts are yelling for me to leave. Enter the kitchen again, ready to leave. And just like a pin drop in the middle of a silent night, hear a loud creak above me like someone putting some weight onto one of the floorboards of the steps going up to the second floor, which lead into the kitchen and living room from a landing. If someone wanted to, they could catch me if they got down the stairs before I got out of the hallway or back porch edition thing. Fucking book it out the house, heartbeat racing with zero fucks of how much sound I was making exiting this damn place. My buddy is looking at me scared. Tell him I felt weird in that house again. He said he felt that way before going in there but just played it off. What the fuck? We bring it back up a week or so ago. House is now lived in by people. Was repaired by some guys who bought it after we broke in, and the police were brought to it to investigate. Talking about demons and interdimensional beings. I researched the place more. Austrian immigrants who were Catholic and spoke German lived here. A priest lived here. A Croatian guy lived here. Austrian dude who had 5 sons' father was killed in an assassination in 1908. You can look this up. The dude who was murdered was named Anton Haberl. They were coal miners, not uncommon for our location back in the 1900 seconds. Shot by another miner on Thanksgiving Day 1908. Them. Last son died in December 2015. None of them had any children or married. Their family died with the last son. My friend thinks the excess of the Catholic shit was because a demon was attached to the place. Thinks the priest blessed the house. I'm not sure what to think. He doesn't ever want to talk to me about it anymore. So, if my friend wasn't bullshitting me, did we encounter a demon or a shadow being? I'm led to believe myself it was a demonic entity. My friend's theory about the Catholic relics made a lot of sense. I have never been a believer of the paranormal. Skeptic but open-minded, most YouTube videos are fake as fuck. But if my buddy wasn't making this up, we may have encountered something strange in an abandoned house.
There are documents kept in Russian monasteries about demonic kidnappings tracing back to at least the 1800 seconds. Children disappearing out of trace while traveling between villages, etc. Some were saved and found days later due to intervention of monks and saints and prayers of entire communities. Surviving children reported being taken by entities fast as the wind and taken to cottages deep within woods, where they were chained and fed by some sort of witches. Those that survived refused to eat. Anyhow, these demonic kidnappings were physical and real, reported by entire villages with living witnesses. Worth mentioning is that those cottages were later not found by villagers. They apparently never existed in physical reality. Reports were kept in monasteries and never published. Some were found and released, but they remain obscure. Some of the stories are more horrifying than any movie, with boys being under demonic control for years, while presumed dead and missing. They were forced to obey demonic entities and perform various tasks each day and night. But I digress. Point being, these disappearances today could very well be the same, happen in front of everyone's nose and no one would know.
So true story. I had this girlfriend 3 years ago. She was hugely into paranormal shit. Believed in all of it. I didn't, but I always found it interesting. We saw this scary movie at some point that involved demon summoning. And she got really into it. Asked me if I wanted to try it with her. She was scared to try it alone. I figured why not? She did a bunch of research and read a bunch of methods. I don't know exactly what it was. I just said I would go along with it. In the end, the things I knew she settled on was a moonless night. In a blacked out room, she did this kind of weird looking almost pentagram with salt. She had 5 candles on each point of the star. It was the only light in the room. She was adamant on that. They weren't particularly bright either, so she read from a printed out piece of paper. We both pricked our fingers for a drop of blood and then we blew out the candles and waited in the dark. Though she was firm on the fact neither of us put any part of our bodies inside the circle. We waited in the darkness for a few minutes holding each other, not making any noise. Honestly, I don't believe in this stuff, but it was kinda intense. Fun but intense. Eventually she lit a candle. Because we had to leave all our electronics outside. Nothing happens, surprise, surprise. We go to bed. She is really freaked out though. She was all about doing it, but after the fact she was worried she made a mistake. After a lot of cuddling and calming we went to bed. So this is the weird part. That night she woke me up by twisting and turning in her sleep. She was clearly having a bad dream. So I turned on the light and gently shook her awake. She woke up screaming. Not super loud, but loud enough. She was crying and told me a demon came to her in her dreams and told her that it was going to eat her soul and take her body. She was crying and shaking and just a total wreck. Needless to say, I didn't sleep that night. This shit went on for a week. She kept having the same nightmare and it got worse and worse because she was so sleep deprived. I started talking to her about if she should go back on her anti-anxiety meds or something. I did my best to convince her it wasn't real. But the more it went on, the more she believed it. I was really worried. She was clearly becoming undone by this whole experience. She started reading more and more stuff online. Put up all kinds of wards to protect herself. She even tried to do a reverse ritual thing she looked up. I went along with it, hoping that would calm her down and be the end of it. Nothing seemed to work. She wasn't having the dreams every night at this point, but often enough. She even got a little protective tattoo on her wrist. I mean, it was getting crazy. So I eventually came up with the idea of having her try to put the curse or whatever on me. Since I helped her summon the demon too. She was really against it at first. But her resolve crumbled and she hoped I would have a strong enough mind or aura to deal with it. So we did this other ritual or whatever where we sat in a pentagram and did a blood mixing thing. We were committed and only had sex with each other. So I wasn't worried about either of us being clean. That seemed to calm her down. Though she promised she'd take it back if I had issues. So not long after this, maybe a week, I had a similar dream. Not surprising really, as she told me all about them in detail enough. I didn't wake up screaming or anything, but it was unsettling. I never told her about it, but she always looked at me strangely after we did this. Like she didn't really trust me or was worried I would be possessed. I think part of it got her hot sexually, to be totally honest, when I went a little rough on her. But she always started to keep her distance. And I found her just staring at me for periods of time when she thought I wasn't looking. The breaking point came when I was changing the bedsheets, something she usually did, and I found out that she hid a little fucking knife on the side of the bed in between the mattress and box spring. At that point I was like, Okay, I'm out. I don't need to be stabbed in my sleep. I never told her I found it. I just kind of said we needed some time apart and she didn't even fight it. It was for the best, really. I was getting sick of all this crap with her. But it made me think back on some of the things we did in bed before our breakup. Thinking back now, I distinctly remember times when I was above her, and she was looking straight at me with a kind of nervous but excited look. I didn't think of it then, but her hand was usually draped over the side of the bed where she was keeping her knife. Just in case, I suppose. It was odd as fuck thinking about it now. If I said or did the wrong thing, would she have pulled it out and stabbed me? Why did she even want to do it in the first place? It made no sense, as she was at the same time distant, but oddly aggressive to do it during those weeks. Needless to say, I never brought this up with her and haven't spoken or contacted her in years.
I worked as a CNA through college in a few rundown nursing homes. We had a lot of traveling nurses and not much to do at night, so I always made a point to ask about anything that had happened to them. This one's short, but it's one of my favorites. Night at a hospital back in the 90s. Man brought in by police has been wandering around the city screaming incoherently. Think it might be a manic episode or a bad drug reaction. Strange, because the guy does not fit the type. Nice clothes, good hygiene. The cops hand the guy over to the nurses, immediately calming down. Screaming becomes more of a chanting, then almost talking. A couple of the more religious nurses think he's speaking in tongues. None of the nurses can figure out what's wrong with the guy. Call the ER resident. Resident is from Saudi Arabia. Comes out of the office to the floor. Stops and listens to patient talking for about 30 seconds, then nopes the fuck back to his office. Nurse telling the story goes and tells him to get his shit together. Asks him WTF. Resident tells her he isn't going near that guy. Patient isn't speaking in tongues, he's speaking in Arabic and he's talking to a demon. Almost as soon as the resident is done telling her this, the guy starts losing his shit again. Eventually put into a padded room after telling several nurses, and patient's deadpan.
I'm going to eat your eyes.
Fights like a caged animal every time somebody enters the room, has to be sedated by security. When he came out of it a day later, the guy was apparently the nicest guy you could ever meet, but had no recollection of the past 2 days and didn't speak a word of any language besides English.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel, as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember that all videos have been archived on the Odyssey page.